the industry,
Mhm.
and the card that's used. And what I mean by that is if you have a co-branded American Airlines card, that's a rewards-based card, that is a higher rate that is assessed to the merchant than if you have just a plain vanilla card. And the other thing that's happening as a result of that is the cost associated with providing those rewards or rebates to the consumer is borne by the issuer of the card. And what they're starting to do is, what the issuers are starting to do is, when the interchange is low, so let's use our example of a charity, and let's just say, round numbers, it's 1% is the interchange. They're not giving you the reward for using your card at a charity. And this is a hypothetical example. I'm just trying to give you a sense that what's happening in the industry is,
that's interesting.
The rate is now being influenced by the merchant, and the reward is being influenced by the bank or the issuer. American Express probably do the same thing.
Economics are not meeting in the middle.
Exactly.
So much. Something's got to give.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
And now I'll give you an extreme example. For instance, in the UK, if you use a cab in the UK and you want to use a card, they charge you 10% to use the card. 10%.
Wow.
It's crazy. It's crazy. The value prop is incredibly strong in a taxi cab.
Yeah.
And what they're basically saying by doing that is, I don't want to pay the fee, fine, but I'm encouraging you to give me cash, which you wouldn't think would be what anybody in this ecosystem would want. But that's just an example of what's happening.
I'm sorry, really quick. Who's getting the lion's share of that charge in the UK? Isn't there a lot of downward regulatory pressure in the UK and Europe interchange? I don't know that much about it, but is it the acquirer that's doing it? No.
Think about what you just said, and you're 100% right. There is incredible downward pressure in the world on reducing interchange.
Yeah.
There is no pressure. That's the wholesale rate.
Yeah.
That's the wholesale rate.
Right.
Nobody is controlling what the retail rate is, or nobody is controlling what the surcharge is.
Okay.
What they're saying is you can surcharge. They don't say how much.
Interesting. Right. My goodness. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. It's just, I mean, I in those situations, I just do not see the benefit of, like, a cab driver driving around with, like, just stockpiles of cash. You know?
Well, think about it. It's dangerous for them.
It is.
And also, from a government perspective, it can go from a recorded transaction to an unrecorded transaction.
Right.
So just bad. But unfortunately, think about it. We've just spent a little bit of time talking about how complicated this stuff is. People who are making the rules aren't as educated, and their knowledge base isn't as in-depth as, people who've been working in the industry for years. So they just don't know. They just assume, if I do X, it's going to have the rippling effect that I expect.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas if you think about it, and part of what my statement is going to be is because obviously I've worked for American Express, I've worked for MasterCard, so I'm a payment person that's card based, but everything should be urge to be put on a card.
Mm-hmm.
From a government perspective.
Right.
Everything. Because I'd get better data about what's going on, I'd get more revenue, what's going on, and the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, some of the things that have been put in place are more of a deterrent than, something that encourages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's the examples.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really interesting perspective that I haven't thought of it that way. You're right. Huh. Yeah, it's an interesting time in the industry for sure.
And we didn't spend any time talking about PayPal. And
yeah.
we didn't spend any time talking about China Union Pay.
Yeah.
And they're interesting for a couple of reasons, because if you think about China Union Pay, there's over 1 billion people in China, and really as of today, those people can only get a China Union Pay card.
Right.
So when they leave China, they have a China Union Pay card, and they're going to go into the tourist places. If you take notice, most tourist places will accept China Union Pay. Because if they don't, they're not going to, the person coming from China just doesn't have another option.
Right.
And the rates tend to be similar than what American Express and Visa and MasterCard actually charge. So the rate to the merchant is pretty much the same. Not much of a difference. And I would imagine, and I don't know this is just a hypothesis I have, they would also provide incentives to the retailer depending upon all the other things that we talked about for all the other domestic players. All the reasons why you would do it. They would do the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, PayPal is interesting in that most of PayPal's business is online, but they have started to go out and sign up merchants that have a physical presence, so that when you go to check out, you can actually check out using PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
So they're what I'll call a new entrance into this ecosystem in the physical world. They're a formidable player in the virtual world.
How are they doing that? NFC? Like, they're not issuing. Are they issuing? No, they're not issuing physical cards, are they?
Well, two things. So, in a weird way, yes. You can get a PayPal MasterCard debit card it acts just like any other kind of debit card, only instead of debiting your bank account, it debits your PayPal account.
Oh, right. Okay.
You can also get a PayPal credit card, co-branded credit card. But what I'm talking about, so those things, they work just like any other card in the marketplace. But I know that they have gone out and they have signed up, for example, Home Depot. Mm-hmm. And Home Depot, when you go to pay, and it says, how do you want to pay? And you say, I want to pay with credit. One of the options is PayPal, just like it would be online. Mm-hmm. And you could pay using your PayPal account.
Oh, so you just like type some things into the terminal?
No, so like there's a little bug on the when you're online, and if you want to pay with PayPal, and you hit that PayPal wallet bug, the same exact thing, and then you would give you would type in your password.
Oh,
just like you.
Okay. I'm just thinking. So in a physical location, that's what you would do. Yeah,
in a physical location, that's what you do.
So the credentials are okay. So then, if you put your password in the terminal, then it's going out to auth PayPal who has your credentials.
Exactly. Exactly right. But it's another player in the market competing for shelf space at the checkout with the other brands, but it's also somebody who is going to be negotiating rate with large retailers, with primarily large retailers, at least initially. And your question about incentives and services will apply to them and China Union Pay, just like it does to American Express, Discover, MasterCard, and Visa.
Okay. That's
and if you think about it from a PayPal perspective, you know there's going to be a cost to a retailer, to Home Depot, to actually implement a new payment option on their point-of-sale devices.
Right.
So there's a huge expense to that, and who would you expect to pay for that?
PayPal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't realize they were doing that as much in the physical locations.
It's the logical next step for them.
Right.
You know, they want it. In essence, they have a closed loop ecosystem online, which is there's money in your PayPal account regardless of how it got there. It's there.
Yep.
And then they want you to spend it, but they want you to spend it at a PayPal merchant so that the money stays within their ecosystem.
Right.
And then if I spend it at Home Depot or I spend it at Joe's Pizzeria and he accepts PayPal, then the money goes from PayPal to PayPal, and I made a fee, but it didn't leave the PayPal ecosystem, which means there's going to be another transaction. And also, when you think about that, all of those transactions aren't happening at Discover, MasterCard, Visa, or American Express.
Right.
That used to happen there.
So they have their own rails that they can.
They have their own rails.
They do. Right. Okay.
They have their own rails.
Huh. Very interesting. Okay. All right. Cool. This has been great. I appreciate all this information.
Terrific. Glad I could be helpful.
Yeah, you have been. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye
now. Bye now.